Sand Americana.
What's that?
It's a photography company that takes pictures of children in home. My job was to go in to new parents or old parents and sell them these wonderful packages. It paid for college. Before I graduated college, I became an account executive at 1010 Wins. They gave me a phone book. They said, look through it and find your business.
Yeah, the white pages.
The white pages and the yellow pages. Moved on to head up biz dev for Imus in the morning. I kind of got bored with doing that.
Yeah.
Got together with a buddy of mine and launched a little ride-sharing company 2006 called Cab Corner. I think at our peak we had about 10,000 active daily users. To the bases and talked to the individual base owners. The base owners would get an email.
Okay.
And then ping their drivers where to pick people up. So many things wrong, but so many things right. Bloomberg was in office, they were a big fan. Slow at first, but we started to get a lot of press.
New York City only?
No, we went globally. We went big first. Too big, too fast. We were never profitable. We just acquired and did a rebrand on a French company, Paris-based, called Cab Easy. It's create a dynamic bidding platform for black cars and livery car services.
Now, who invested in you?
Pretty much all the same investors that invested in Uber. Say maybe some VC funds or some accelerators that were taking their time in terms of telling us when they would give us the money. Very, well, experienced and excelled in our respective careers.
Yeah.
But inexperienced from the startup perspective. So if we had targeted micro communities initially, which we were actually advised to target, marketing was always fighting with technology for budget, and we didn't have enough of it to go around. And they just broke all the rules. They were getting sued left and right. We couldn't risk doing that. We didn't have the war chest that they did. Weeks to a month later, Uber launched UberX to compete on the low end. It became more of a driver acquisition play. Waited and waited and waited and waited until they started seeing market share disappear before they finally acted and were willing to do business with folks like us.
Yeah.
And we went by the wayside. So ultimately, the team disbanded. Sidecar was bought by GM. They were shutting it down. When they shut down, our fulfillment partner went with it, and so it fizzled. I didn't know what I didn't know. I wanted to learn more about technology, so I went to work for a British company called by the name of Endava. And they're basically a systems integrator. I worked alongside their CTO to launch the North American business. Helped launch Qualitance US, which was a competing Eastern European IT services company. Now I'm fully dedicated to Hindsight. I was introduced to Hirsch Patel.
He's the CEO.
CEO, telling me his idea for how the Hindsight technology and smart tagging tech was going to work. We're going to be live on a Tribune site. I came in initially as an advisor. Great idea, quite brilliant, former Goldman. Like, this guy's got some pretty decent chops. And our relationship grew very quickly. He's the product guy, I'm the business guy. We definitely balance each other out quite well. Started off as a publisher recirculation tool. Get more eyeballs on the page site and keep the eyeballs on there longer. Suggesting related content that's contextually relevant to the reader. Highlight the keywords and phrases that the AI thinks is going to be contextually relevant to that article as the reader hovers over those keywords and phrases to suggest related content. We went live with our first partner of last September of 2018. Immediately, they saw their numbers kind of skyrocketing. We launched on Forbes and also revenues via advertising. India Times, or India Media Group, which is one of the top 3 publishers in India. We're in hustle mode. Publishers, reach out. You'll want it. We're in the process of finalizing our seed round. Some of the investors have had successful exits in the past. Publishers have tried.
Yes.
And failed. 4 people on the biz dev side of things, 3 data scientists, a few interns on the data science side, engineering team, or distributed teams in Argentina and Romania. So we knew how they worked. They're efficient from a budget perspective, and a front-end team in Poland.
Really have a distributed workforce.
It works. It's all about project management and communication. Oh, we're definitely going on site.
to Argentina and Poland?
Yeah, to meet the teams as the product grows, of the problems that we know or challenges that we're going to be faced with, get as ahead of them as we can to adjust and adapt and maneuver to the market trends. It's a positive momentum, great feedback. Everybody that we talk to loves the idea, loves the concept, and it's just a matter of figuring out how to engage and playing with different models and just making it work.
Welcome to Startup Hunter, also streaming on YouTube. I cover startups that are making it, that have made it, or that have failed. And I'm here with Carpino from Hindsight, which is redefining native search. we're going to get into all that. Artificial intelligence, right?
Yes.
It's intelligent. We're going to get into all that. But on this show, what my format is, I want to know your history of entrepreneurship. Now, Lou's actually not the CEO, he's the COO.
And co-founder.
And co-founder. But he has a really entrepreneurial past. So, starting all the way at the beginning, Lou.
At the beginning.
I want to know, where were you born and what did your parents do?
Where was I born? I was born on the Upper West Side of New York City, on the island of Manhattan. My father was a music producer, creative type, and my mother was in finance for a little while, and then migrated over to education.
So your father sounds more entrepreneurial. Did he run his own music production business?
Yep, he did. And grandfather, long history, jazz bars in New York City. Yeah, so I guess that's where I got it.
Interesting. So, as a kid, what was the first entrepreneurial thing that you did? Now, both of us are city kids, so it's sort of difficult to sell lemonade on the corner.
Very difficult.
What was the first hustle that you had?
First hustle I had, well, side hustle I had, was working for Silver Sand Americana.
What's that?
It's a photography company that takes pictures of children in home.
In home?
In home. And my job was to go in to new parents or old parents and sell them these wonderful packages of their kids. How could you look at your beautiful child and not spend $300 on pictures? It's
So you were doing sales for a photographer?
Yeah, well, it was actually the largest in-home photography company in the U.S. Still is, still around.
I can't believe I've never heard of them.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The hook is they give you a free picture, offer a free picture, send the photographer to the home, take the picture. A week later, I come back in and sell the moms.
Ah.
Yes. With everything else, I'd say about 98% of the time, they spend north of 150, 200.
Now, how old were you when you were doing that?
I started when I was 16.
Do you want to? Let's do a helicopter.
Let's do it.
I don't know. I don't have a budget for it just yet. But let me just show. There's this helipad right there, and I'm tempted. One of these days, we're gonna do it. Okay, so how old were you when you were doing that?
About 16. Did it paid for college?
Cool.
Yeah.
I sold Cutco knives when I was around that age.
A very good proving ground.
So, it pays for college. Where did you go to school?
St. John's University.
Which is where?
In Queens.
Here.
Right
Yeah,
here,
yeah.
in Queens. I floated between the Manhattan campus and the Queens campus.
So were you still selling photos in college?
I was.
And
I transitioned
to?
Media sales.
Yeah.
Broadcasting.
While you're in college?
While I was in college. Before I graduated college, I became an account executive at 1010 Wins, AM radio, working for Infinity Broadcasting.
What's the ringtone for 1010 Wins?
The ringtone?
Like the jingle?
The jingle. You give us 22 minutes, we give you the world.
Yeah. Love it.
The 1010 Wins news time at the tone is 10 o'clock.
So you're selling media.
I'm selling air. Actually, it was an interesting time. When I started in radio,
yeah.
I didn't have a computer. They gave me a phone book. They said, look through it and find your business.
Yeah, the white pages.
The white pages and the yellow pages, because we looked at the ads that were in the yellow pages, and if they had a big page, they were spending a lot of money at those.
Got it.
Yep. Went after the big whales, whale hunting.
So, any good stories from that time?
Lots of good stories.
Give me one.
One good story from selling. All right, Imus. All right, 1010 Wins, radio days, past 1010 Wins. So I was in broadcast for like 5 or 6 years. Moved on to head up biz dev for Imus in the morning. This was after he was kicked off the radio and TV. So this was relaunching his career.
Yeah.
On RFD TV, which was the first network, and then we went over to Fox Business. We had to completely rebuild the brand. A legacy brand. He was Howard Stern before Howard Stern existed. Imus was in the mornings, Howard Stern was in the afternoon. They had a big feud. He said something he shouldn't have said, and he got booted off multiple times. Anyway, so we do this annual golf outing in Connecticut for the Imus Ranch for Kids with Cancer. And it was a shotgun start. It was more like boozy golf than anything else. I was horrendous. And Imus basically would walk around with potato rolls, throwing them at the likes of Jim Nantz and other really interesting CEOs and celebrities.
How did the people react to him throwing potato rolls at them?
They were drunk, they laughed and threw them back. Yeah, lots of random walk-ins with, or random celebrity sightings with like Paula Abdul, Dick Gregory, the list goes on.
This was your job, were you doing any entrepreneurial things for yourself?
So I kind of got bored with doing that.
Yeah.
Got together with a buddy of mine from high school and launched a little ride-sharing company 2006 called Cab Corner.
All right, now let's dive into this, because Uber was launched in 2009, so this is 3 years before that. What was the concept? Like, let's dive into that.
The concept was, it started because my buddy was out drinking in the Lower East Side and really didn't want to shell out, I don't know, 40, 50 bucks in a taxi to go over the Brooklyn Bridge and go home. It's like, there's got to be an easier way. There has to be more people in this neighborhood that are going back to the same neighborhood at the same time. And thus, the concept of ride sharing was born. It's not necessarily a new concept. Cities have been doing it for years.
So what did you like?
The iPhone was still relatively new at the time.
Right.
So I have an iPhone. I have an app. There's 100,000 cars, taxis all around us in New York City. Let's figure out a way to make it work and put everyone together in a car. And we almost did it. We did match a lot of people. I think at our peak we had about 10,000 active daily users.
It's amazing. So let's talk about that. Like, the iPhone was new, so were you doing it on those old mobile web phones?
No, it was an iPhone app. Yeah, we launched on an app and we had mobile web as well. So it was a web app and iOS. Then we went Android. We had plenty of downloads. We just went too big too fast. We were young and naive. We did buy a couple of companies, so we consolidated the industry.
So let's unpack this. You're going way too fast for me. What I want to talk about is, so you prototype an app.
Yep.
You hire an app developer.
Yep. We had no app experience whatsoever.
Well, the apps are like super new then.
It was brand new.
So you make an app, and then how do you get taxis on board?
You go to the bases and talk to the individual base owners and, hey, I've got this new
And most of them are probably have been doing the same thing the same way for 20 years.
Yep.
You know, they're like, wait, what is this nonsense? Get out of here.
Yep.
I'm sure you got a lot of that.
Why would anybody ever want to share a ride? That was, that's what we got quite often.
So who was the first taxi company to say yes?
Skyline Car and Limousine.
And
Legacy co-op taxi company in New York City, lots of black cars. They're pretty much one of the core corporate fleets of Manhattan, of the city.
So how did it work? Like, tell me how the user presses the app, tell me how that Skyline taxi receives the request, like break down a whole ride for me, in your first ride.
Your first ride, you open up the app, we geolocate and figure out where you are. We show you how many cars are in the neighborhood. You want your ride, you put in where you're going, your end destination, and the cab would arrive within, let's say, 5 or 10 minutes usually.
So now the taxi gets it,
yeah,
and it's ride sharing.
Well, the taxi gets it, and it worked better, right, when they're concerts or big hub spots, big, highly densely populated areas where people are traveling or drinking, partying, exploring. Yeah, so the ride gets the message, they accept the ride, and they pick up the two people on a particular corner. There's a whole safety concern. So we would never actually drop people off at their physical address. We drop them off at the nearest corner. So that was how we got around and skirted around the creeper safety issue.
Right. And back then when iPhones were really new, drivers didn't have iPhones. Did you give the drivers iPhones?
We did not. We didn't have that budget. But there was mass adaptation. And the drivers didn't necessarily get an iPhone. the black cars had a separate messaging service, so they would get a separate call.
So there was an iPhone at the taxi base.
Yep.
Got it.
Well, there didn't need to be an iPhone at the taxi base. The base owners would get an email.
Okay.
And then ping their drivers where to pick people up, and the system would talk to each other to know where the drivers were, and get the message back.
So how much did it cost for the development cost on this?
We probably spent about 75 grand building it.
Very reasonable.
Yeah. We used Indian developers. We outsourced. That was our first problem.
Okay. Why was it a problem?
We didn't get the creative input that we needed to, from a UX perspective.
Yeah.
That we should have had.
Go straight ahead, guys.
So I mean, we did so many things wrong, but so many things right.
Yeah.
But ultimately,
don't ultimately. We're not there yet. So you launch the app. You get some
get some traction. We're starting to get some traction. We're working with the TLC, which is the Taxi and Limousine Commission of New York City. Matt Dowse was the commissioner at the time. He was a big fan.
Yeah.
Bloomberg was in office. They were a big fan. They actually started drafting legislation to get our technology into all the yellow cabs.
Yeah.
About the same time, Uber had already emerged.
So now, how long had you been in business? Like,
it's about three.
3 years? And this is all you were doing?
I mean, before we were really humming, I mean, it started off, on the back of a piece of paper, right? This is how it's going to work. And we literally have pieces of paper with how the app is going to work, and we're drawing out the functionality of everything.
Yeah.
And wireframes on the back of 8.5 by 11 paper.
3 years go by.
3 years go by. It was probably about a year and a half in development.
Okay.
Before we really got our beta. Well, we got our beta out. Sanko was our first engineer, but we lost him, I think, to IBM. He got like an engineering job there.
Yeah.
So that we hence had to go find some outsourced technology assistance after our beta.
Okay, but let's talk about the growth.
The growth.
What was the growth like? Were you? Just talk about that, the progression.
The growth was slow at first, but we started to get a lot of press and media coverage. Particularly, most major city news organizations or news entities wanted to cover this because, hey, ride sharing, who would do this?
Now,
this
were
is a
you
new
New
thing.
York City only?
No, we went globally. We went big first. So when we launched, we actually launched across the U.S. and then across the world. Too big, too fast.
So were you doing deals with individual taxi companies in each town that you went to?
No. So we kind of got partners in multiple cities, and they started doing the deal fulfillment on their end.
Ah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So extending the branches, so to say.
Okay, so talk about numbers of riders, dollars,
Numbers of riders and dollars. So we got, just like a VIG off of each completed ride. It was still experimental. We were never profitable.
Uber's still not profitable.
We didn't make much money, unfortunately.
But how much revenue were you bringing in?
Pennies. We were barely bringing in revenue. Even though we peaked at about 10,000 users, right? Active users. And that's exactly when, so long story short, when we peaked, we had just acquired and did a rebrand on a French company, Paris-based, called CabEasy. And they had a pretty cool platform. They'd been showing some strong growth. So we wanted to buy their competitor, do a rebrand, and what we did was create a dynamic bidding platform for black cars and livery car services.
Yeah.
Uber was going high end, we were going low end, essentially, because we wanted the bases and the black cars and the livery cars to compete for the business.
Did you so you said you weren't making a lot of money?
No.
So did you fund this acquisition of the Paris company just through personal funds?
Yeah, it was bootstrap funds that we'd and the raise that we had already done.
Now, who invested in you?
Pretty much all the same investors that invested in Uber.
Yeah.
Some friends, some family. Yeah.
So you had venture capital?
No, it was all angel.
Yeah. That's distracting me.
I love the steel drums.
I do too.
No, it was a really interesting time. Things were changing. We all had The funny thing was, most of us at Cab Corner, we all had day jobs, right? So there were competing interests at times, and we built this thing, and we're getting a lot of traction all in our spare time. This was our side hustle.
Yeah.
I hit my brick wall with radio because we were just acquired by another company. So I had downtime, nothing but time to kill. I'm like, okay guys, you've got me full time. Let's have at it.
Now, why do you think it failed? Or, why didn't you become Uber or Lyft?
The team cohesiveness, I think. There were some competing interests across the board.
Yeah.
We weren't sharing information enough.
What do you mean by sharing information?
Meaning there were conversations and deals happening without everyone's, I guess, knowledge per se. So there were some split-second decisions with, let's say, maybe some VC funds or some accelerators that were taking their time in terms of telling us when they would give us the money, and it's a long story.
So.
No, so let me see how can I position this properly.
Okay, well let me give you my perspective. The guys who started Uber were already multimillionaires when they started Uber.
Yeah, they had already had successful exits.
And
this was our first foray into the startup world.
Yep.
Inexperienced, experienced and excelled in our respective careers.
Yeah.
But inexperienced from the startup perspective.
Here's what I want to know. In hindsight, how could you have saved your company and at least killed Lyft?
So if we had targeted micro communities initially, which we were actually advised to target micro communities, going neighborhood to neighborhood, instead of going as big as we did.
Right, you went way too broad.
Yes.
Global,
we didn't have the money to support it.
Globally, and
marketing was always fighting with technology for budget, and we didn't have enough of it to go around.
Yeah. So your idea was you're just going to become this global phenomenon, and the press will carry you, and
yep. Organic reach. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
And what really happened was we had a lot of traction. Travis hired a guy by the name of Tusk. He was his inside political advisor, so to say. $2 on the floor.
There you go. Look at that. $2 on the floor.
And they just broke all the rules. They were getting sued left and right. We couldn't risk doing that. We didn't have the war chest that they did.
Yeah.
We thought of suing them. So kind of going back after we acquired CabEasy and became the dynamic bidding platform, 3 weeks later, 3 weeks to a month later, Uber launched UberX to compete on the low end.
Now, what about Lyft?
Lyft wasn't really a player. Halo was more of a threat.
Halo?
Yeah. They're not around anymore.
Yeah.
Lyft was up and coming, but they didn't have the traction that Uber did in the markets that we were in and competing against.
Yeah.
It became more of a driver acquisition play really quickly.
Yeah.
All the old guard of livery drivers kind of waited until they started seeing market share disappear before they finally acted and were willing to do business with folks like us.
Yeah.
So it took a while. And by that time, the damage had already been done. It was too late. Endgame, Uber, the ultimate unicorn, that still technically isn't profitable, is king.
Yeah.
And we went by the wayside. So ultimately, the team disbanded. We pivoted. We became a white label solution for ride sharing, for safe ride sharing for college campuses and universities. So
cool.
We were on Northwestern. We partnered with Sidecar for fulfillment. And Cab Corner, that ultimately is what ended Cab Corner and CabEasy. Sidecar was bought by GM. They were shutting it down. When they shut down, our fulfillment partner went with it, and there wasn't the energy left to put in.
Yeah.
So it fizzled. I still have the app on my old iPhone.
I love it. I mean, there's lots. Yeah, I can feel it's a close one, for sure. And so what'd you do after that? And what year are we talking about?
This has got to be 2012 at this point, I guess. 2012, 2013, I realized I didn't know what I didn't know. And I wanted to learn more about technology. So I went to work for a British company called by the name of Endava. And they're basically a systems integrator, digital transformation, do a lot of cutting edge development work through Eastern European resources. So basically offshoring. I worked alongside their CTO to launch the North American business. And we had meteoric growth over my tenure there. I think we went from about 700 people to about 1,800 over the course of 2 years.
And what was your role with the CTO?
I was SVP of BizDev. So I was his right-hand sales guy.
Yep.
And it was fun. It was a blast.
What kind of customers did they have?
A lot of financial services, working with folks like NASDAQ, JP Morgan, Citi, to Manchester United, Cadbury, the RNA, which is the Open. Let's go up. Why not?
This is our helicopter for the day.
This is our high point.
Our cheap helicopter.
We're getting the view. Yeah, so did that. Started to learn more about the development process and the life cycle of technology and technology renewal. And never really learned how to program or code, though I did take a class or two in Python.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I love Python. I think Python is the best language.
Well, Hindsight is written in Python. So
you're the CEO is a coder.
Yeah, he taught himself how to code.
Okay, so
Hirsch Patel.
So you worked for this big consulting company.
Yeah.
And how did that end?
We had a difference in opinions from a growth strategy perspective.
Okay.
And parted ways amicably. And
what did you want the company to do?
I wanted them to spend more money in the U.S. Sooner than they did from their plan. Everything was being planned out of London, so they had strategic initiatives.
And what year?
What is this? 2014?
Yeah.
2015-ish.
Okay.
Give or take. Made a lot of friends in Eastern Europe and helped launch Qualitance US, which was a competing Eastern European IT services company.
Got it.
Doing the same thing, but the network I already had, it was kind of a natural progression. And yeah, we co-founded the US entity and we're 50-50 partners and we made some stuff happen. It was some cool things. We started working with the factory in San Francisco, which was hot at the time. Tom Chi from Google was there. Really cool, innovative things.
You were doing the tech development for startups.
Yeah, not just startups, but mature companies that needed some cool tech. So I was learning how they worked, how they thought. I was able to see some of the holes in the process.
What do you think the holes are?
Communication is a big hole across the organization in terms of what the business goals and objectives are versus what technology's goals and objectives are. It's not as big of a problem today as it was then.
Right, because technology is not, there's a lot more programmers. Everybody who was a programmer 10 years ago, but there's just a lot more programmers. So they're no longer like high priests and,
Right. They're not the same. Yeah. They sat on their throne. This is IT. We will take care of the technology. You guys stay on your side of the business. You just tell us what you want. They waterfall it down. A year later, it's built. The product's no longer relevant because the business needs changed. It was right when Agile was becoming a thing. It still is becoming a thing.
Yeah.
And the Agile approach to product development, which is actually critical, especially for apps, but when you apply it to the larger corporate environment, it just makes a lot of sense. I mean, the lifespan of a CMO is about, 6 months to a year and a half at most. their marketing objectives from a technology perspective dramatically change. So whatever projects they start are done by the time they're gone. So visions never really get realized. So you have to get into rapid prototyping and rapid deployment in order to really get a POC working or not working.
Of course.
But to test it out, you got to get it out quick.
So you run this consulting company.
Yep.
And are you still doing that?
I consult from time to time, but now I'm fully dedicated to Hindsight.
So how did Hindsight begin?
So I was introduced to Hirsch Patel,
who's the CEO?
CEO, by a mutual, by another high school friend. He's like, he said, I met this guy, literally, verbatim. I met this guy at a media thing, and he has an interesting product that he's working on. I'd like you to check it out and give me your feedback. So I sat down with him, had lunch, and started speaking to him. He started telling me his idea for how the Hindsight technology and smart tagging tech was going to work. We were going to be live on a Tribune site very soon. I said, okay, it's very interesting. There's a good model.
And he had done the work to already get a first proof of concept customer.
Yes, yeah, he did a shit ton of work, pardon my French. He hustled to get those deals in. And they're a quite valuable partner because we gleaned so much information just from our first POC. So
now, what I want to know is, did you just like stop all that you were doing, or how,
No, it was a gradual transition. I had a full-time job at the time, so I came in initially as an advisor.
Okay.
Because, young CEO, 27, great idea, quite brilliant, former Goldman. Like, this guy's got some pretty decent chops. With some coaching, he could have something pretty big here with a lot of potential. And our relationship grew very quickly.
So let me tell you that I was him, at a past time in my life. I was writing code, that had some potential, but I didn't have the understanding that not all problems are solved with code.
Right.
And, not enough emphasis on marketing and sales. So, to all you young guys out there who are coders, you need a balancing force, and Lou is this balancing force.
He's the product guy. I'm the business guy. That's how it works out. And we definitely balance each other out quite well. I think what are we? I think we're probably up to about 13 people now, give or take.
But
most of it's engineering.
Before 13 people, I want to know more about. So you started as an advisor.
Started as an advisor.
And how did it become, full time?
I just started having more and more conversations about the tech and really doing a deeper dive into the world of publishing. I'd been in it and in digital media for a while, so I knew what was going on. I knew of the Outbrains of the world and the clickbait that everybody loves to hate, and I just saw a real opportunity to deliver something contextually relevant. Obviously, there are a lot of other learnings that we continually find out as the product evolves.
Now we haven't really gotten into
it yet.
The product. So what was the prototype that you were selling to the Tribune?
Basically, started off as a publisher recirculation tool, which it still helps with that.
Publisher recirculation tool? Huh?
So basically, a tool to help get more eyeballs on the page site and keep the eyeballs on there longer. Keep them going to more people, keep consumers on a website longer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is the technique and the actual nuts and bolts of how you do that?
There are a lot of ways one can do it. The clickbait being one of them, right? But you do it by serving or by suggesting related content that's contextually relevant to the reader, right?
Okay.
If they're reading something.
So let's take an example, Chicago Tribune. There's an article on, the California wildfires.
Right.
So let's use that as an example to paint a picture of how your technology would work on one of their sites. And I like as the prototype, the first version.
As the first version, a reader, we have to incorporate our script into the back end with all the other stuff that's being loaded on the page with the video player and everything else. But what the reader really wants to do is read the article.
Yeah.
But the readers aren't necessarily always experts reading that particular article. They're reading it because they're interested in the topic. But if you're reading an article on the Chicago Tribune about the California wildfires, you don't know where in California they are. So maybe they're just outside of LA. So what our product does and did, it would highlight the keywords and phrases that the AI thinks is going to be contextually relevant to that article. And we create a little pop-up as the reader hovers over those keywords and phrases to suggest related content that publisher actually is within that publisher's archives.
Okay, so when did you launch it?
We went live with our first partner last September of 2018.
How did it go?
Great. There's some debugging to be done, but we launched on the military section of the Virginia Pilot, pilotonline.com, which is the official state newspaper of Virginia. So, a lot of people, a lot of influential people read their, go to the site. It's not a super huge site from a traffic perspective, but it certainly has a lot of relevant content that the readers are going to want to engage with. So we went live immediately. They saw their numbers kind of skyrocketing. Their dwell time was increasing, their click-throughs were increasing, their page views per session were increasing, and it was a slightly different iteration of the product then than it is now, because then it was a click action, a click to engage. So the reader physically had to scroll over or hover over and then actively click into the article.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So you have Virginia, and then the Tribune went live around the same time?
Yeah, Virginia Pilot is part of Tribune.
Oh, I see.
So we were QAing and testing for a few months and experimenting to see what works, and then we launched on Forbes. That was our next big win.
That's huge.
All while having plenty of conversations. Hey, who are these new kids on the block with this interesting tech?
But there has to be competition out there.
There is. There's competition on the rails of the page per se, and obviously there's Google search. Like we've actually changed our positioning and pitch and product as a company since Hindsight launched. We went from simply helping out journalists and reporters from a research perspective and an editorial perspective, to interlink the related content, to becoming a tool to drive readership and engagement, and also revenues via advertising. So we created space for ad units also to be plugged in, and those ads that are being served are contextually relevant ads to the reader. So there's a higher chance that they're going to click through to it, engage, buy a product. It all comes down to sales and media. So.
And have you grown outside of the Tribune?
We are working with, let's say, the India Times or India Media Group, which is one of the top 3 publishers in India.
That's interesting. So did you fly over there?
No, we didn't. I think we met them in Amsterdam. I wasn't actually on the trip.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hirsch was out there. Yeah, just striking up conversations, continuing them, and we're in hustle mode. Publishers, reach out. You'll want it. It works.
So yeah, like each little word on the page is clickable. So what do you think about video? Like, is text dying? Is video, beating text?
Video's hot, right?
Yeah.
OTT, AVOD, it's all hot technology that's out there right now, and there are companies out there that are serving up contextually relevant videos, per se, after a consumer's watching it. I mean, we're going to go into video. We could serve video, because if you think about it, the way our AI works on the back end, it's basically natural language processing, right? So if you peel away the words and you apply our tech to a video, you just take the audio component and you've got the same product. So it'll work. We'll get there. We'll get there.
So have you raised money for this?
Yeah, we're in the process of finalizing our seed round.
Okay. So you're at 13 employees before you even really hit a seed.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
So
we're 3/4 of the way there. We're raising $1 million.
Is that those 13 employees? Is that all from revenue you've made?
No, that's all from bootstrapping.
Yeah.
And the investors that have already. We just got to 13 recently.
So these are angel investors?
Yeah.
And were these some
friends,
of the
family, angel?
Were any of these guys some of the guys or women that invested in you for your taxi company?
Not yet.
Yeah.
There may be, but not yet. Some of the investors have had successful exits in the past in the app space. So we're hustling. It's a good network of people to push the product and get it out there.
And what are you going to do with all this money that you're raising, or just that's literally to just keep the lights on?
It's all product development primarily, most of it, and marketing. So product development and marketing, maybe hire a few more biz dev people, and support. We need ad ops. As we're growing and scaling, we need additional support from all angles. So we're still placing things on our roadmap to figure it out.
So are you only targeting newspapers, or are you targeting other websites?
Initially, any publisher of content that has text-related or video-related content, that's who we're working with right now. It's the easiest way for us to monetize, and it's the easiest POC and integration.
Right, because you're designed for text, so
yes.
Why not suck up all the text business that you can get?
Yep.
And then worry about what you're gonna do.
That's what we're going for. I mean, it's the low-hanging fruit, and we're adding a pretty significant benefit, right? A 30% jump in page views and dwell time is pretty appealing. Will those numbers hold? I don't know. We'll refine the product as we grow and as we get more data. But we're giving the power back to publishers. So
now, what's this stop a publisher, from saying, let's just do it ourselves?
Well, we're patent pending, so they technically won't be able to once we've been granted the patent, but they could try. It'll take them a long time and spend a lot of money. Other publishers have tried.
Yes.
And failed.
And why do they fail?
They fail because they're simply serving an ad via hover, via keyword. There have been companies who have tried this over the years, but they literally weren't necessarily serving relevant content via the hover.
Yeah, so
they're very different iterations in its infancy.
It's the mixing of the relevant content that makes the ad more palatable.
It makes the consumer is actively engaging with those keywords that they care about, right? It's contextualization, and with the buzzwords.
Right, so it's whatever keyword that's interesting to you.
Yeah.
So there could be
think about the information you get from that, right? If you have millions of page views, you're reading all these articles, you can develop trends. It's search, right? So we're getting the same type of data and information as Google gets when somebody types something in, except these guys are engaging it. We're making it easier for the reader to engage.
Let me paint a picture. You see this website, and then on the website that you're looking at, maybe like 20 words will be highlighted. So you can just sort of mouse over them, and on the mobile, they have a mobile experience. And you like click on a word, or you tap a word, and like it brings up this window with other relevant content from the same website, and plus some ads.
Right.
So
doesn't have to have any ad serving. It could just be a content play and a recirculation play. The publisher may just want to keep readers on their site and engage longer. But usually revenue gets involved and they get wind and they want to start putting an ad unit in there.
Well, the newspaper industry has to reinvent itself.
And they've been doing a good job of it, I think. New York Times is kind of back on top.
Do you have them as a customer?
Not yet.
Yeah.
We are, we're actively engaging in conversation.
That was the company I had in mind when I thought, they have the resources to possibly do it themselves.
Yeah.
But if you have an efficient product and an efficient solution, like
Plug and play, essentially.
yeah, and you know, what do your 13 employees do right now?
Let's see. We've got about 4 people on the biz dev side of things.
So they're actively going to potential customers.
Yeah, they're actively prospecting and engaging and striking up the conversation, getting the POCs lined up. We're releasing version 2 of the product in a couple of weeks, so that'll streamline the whole onboarding process. So we've cut it down, from about 4 to 6 weeks to I think about 2 weeks to onboard a new customer with the new version of the product. So, yeah.
So you got 4 biz dev.
4 biz dev guys. We have, I think we're 3 data scientists, a few interns on the data science side, engineering team in Argentina.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Did you do that, or did?
So one of our chief technology advisor worked for a company called Globant as their CTO for a while. He also happened to be the chief digital officer of the New York Stock Exchange. But he had a lot of experience with working with the Argentinian teams, and when I was with Endava, we worked on multiple teams or distributed teams in Argentina and Romania. So we knew how they worked. They're efficient from a budget perspective, and you know they get the creative juice that we need.
So
and a front end team in Poland.
Wow, so you really have a distributed workforce.
It works. It's all about project management and communication. As long as that's said, everyone knows their tasks. Put them in Jira, check them off. You're good to go.
Now, do you feel the need to go there on site?
Oh, we're definitely going on site.
to Argentina and Poland.
Yeah, to meet the teams as the product grows. It's and we're going to grow the teams there. There's at least that's the plan. So yeah, eventually we'll have maybe 10, 20 people, 60 people. It's going to be very engineering heavy. So where that distribution ends up lying, we don't know yet. But we're totally open to distributing it.
So that's another reason why a giant company, like what giant company is going to have the resources to find a good outsourcing team? I mean, maybe they have, but most likely you've done all that work, plus you have the product that does exactly what they need it to do.
Right.
So you're pretty far along, and it's probably difficult to beat a company like you with such a niche thing.
Yeah.
Especially if you do it
We
well.
hope. We're trying. All we can do is get some new partners and keep experimenting and evolving the product, and hopefully it gets better, performance gets better, and we'll take it from there. We'll see what cards lay in front of us.
Yeah. With all of your, experience with startups, having really come close in the taxi industry, you're all in on this company.
I'm all in. Yeah. This is my next big bet. Since there have been a few ideas that have been dabbled, a couple of loosely organized attempts at other startup companies, one in the telephony space, one in the ACR space, which is automatic content recognition, but none of that really resonated as much as this one does.
So how are you going to take all the lessons you've learned in the past to ensure that this one, gets as far as it possibly can?
Try not to make the mistakes that were made, and optimize, get as ahead of the problems that we know or challenges that we're going to be faced with, get as ahead of them as we can in the near term, and be nimble enough to adjust and adapt and maneuver to the market trends and the technology that other players are using, and maintain relevancy for these publishers and for the consumer.
That's it. Literally, that sentence right there is very. I think there's a lot of potential success in that. I think that really encapsulates entrepreneurship, which is like, I really think we are like animals in the wild. We're looking around.
Roar.
we're looking around, you know, we're looking for where the food is. We've discovered one technique to get resources. We're going to use that as long as we can use it, you know?
Right.
And I think that really encapsulated it well, you know, especially given your past experience. So I'm excited, and I think you're going to do it.
We're trying. We're trying to make it happen. Lots of positive momentum, great feedback. Everybody that we talk to loves the idea, loves the concept, and it's just a matter of figuring out how to engage and playing with different models and just making it work.
Yeah.
Seeing what sticks.
So we're right down here. Lou's next meeting is somewhere in one of those buildings, hopefully.
World Trade Center.
And thank you so much for coming on. The name of the product is Hindsight, and publishers are really the customers.
But consumers are the users.
Consumers are the users.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Happy to be on.
Yeah.
It was a good time. It was a great walk.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.